I don't think of storytelling as just a utility or a vehicle in order to convey it, even the best truths. I think of it as a good thing itself because God made the world and he's called me to love and serve these kids. And it's not just about sort of tricking them or manipulating them or dominating them into information that I want, but that it's like to give them a gift of love that comes from the heart and to tell the truth always, but to do a good job.
Aloha, everyone. Welcome to All Things Possible. Today, we are so excited to have one of our favorite authors that we've had the joy of reading his books to our children over the last couple of years. His stories are so deep. They kind of remind me of like a younger version of
The Lord of the Rings.
The Lord of the Rings and kind of like Chronicles of Narnia and kind of the darkness and light aspect, a lot of Christian parables within the story, and it's just been such a joy. We loved this conversation with Sam
Smith.
He is just, this guy's going deep in all his thoughts, and it really showed in this conversation. So we hope you love today's episode and are encouraged, and be sure to check out the Green Ember series. These books are so good. I even nerded out before reading them to our children. I got lost in our bedroom and disappeared for a week because I couldn't stop reading his book. So check them out, the Green Ember series, and we hope you love this conversation.
Welcome back to All Things Possible. We are here with Sam Smith, author of the Green Ember series and a few other titles that we have yet to check out. But our family is big fans of your writings and your stories. They inspire children and they teach just incredible values and morals that we're just feel really good about sharing with our children. And, it's hard to find good content out there. So we're thankful for you. Thankful that you're here joining us on All Things Possible. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be with you. And it's really encouraging to hear you say those things. That's an answer to prayer.
Yes, sir.
I love it. Yeah. Early on in our parenting journey, we decided to go low tech. So we really don't watch movies too much, not much TVs, don't even browse the web at all. Maybe an hour a week, if that. And then sometimes when we travel, the children look forward to watching movies on the airplane. But otherwise, we do a lot of reading. And hands down, your Green Ember series is one of our family favorites. So we're so grateful for the work you're doing. And any mom I talk to, I'm like, oh, you got to check out the Green Ember series. And read it with your children. So I'd love to hear a little bit about you and your background getting into writing. And I can't help but wonder if in your childhood, were you super creative and imaginative? Do you look at your child and see how it translates into your adulthood and becoming an author?
I do, for sure. I grew up in a literal holler, we call them. I don't know if you've heard of someone talking about being from the holler, but I would literally grow up in a holler, which is the hollow between two mountains, so it's kind of back in the woods. Yeah.
Nice.
And we have a lot of those here because West Virginia is the mountain state. I mean, compared to sort of Colorado or out west, it's small. It would be more like hills, but they're everywhere, all over the state. It's all mountains and woods. And so I grew up deep in a holler in Wayne County, West Virginia, and played outside almost, all the time, constantly. So it's funny because when I was a kid, I'm 48 now, I didn't know a lot of boys that read. It was kind of like there were girls that read at school, but there was maybe a couple of guys, but almost everybody just played sports or hunting, fishing, that kind of a thing. There wasn't a lot of reading. So that was just normal to me. I didn't read. I wasn't a reader. I played all the sports and was active, was outside all the time. It's funny, even though that's the case, I still loved stories. I loved movies. I loved Star Wars and these kinds of things that would get into my imagination. My mom read us the Chronicles of Narnia, and we were missionaries. So when I was 12, we moved to South Africa. So I've had this sort of Afro-Latin childhood of Appalachian and Africa mixed together. But when we were traveling the States during deputations, sort of speaking, my dad was speaking at different churches. we would listen. My mom would read to us, so she would read to us of Brother Andrew's stories, and just a lot of different kind of missionary stories and other stories. So I loved reading. I didn't know it. I didn't know, and I was actually, I think, when I played out in the woods or when I played anywhere, I was always making things up, and I made up games and I made up characters and I made up stories all the time. And I was playing in that world, and I didn't really realize that I was practicing world building at the time. But that's basically what I do now. I mean, I basically play in a world, and it's informed and it's thoughtful, and it's, I have a different, there's a different level of sophistication, but at the core, it's still sort of a similar kind of a thing. And I almost wonder, even like with you guys and with surfing and stuff, it does feel like sometimes when there's the whole Eric Liddell quotation about running and feeling God's pleasure from the Chariots of Fire movie. Sorry, I'm mentioning a lot of movies here, but but that whole idea of just feeling, some people call it a flow state or that sort of a thing, when something's challenging enough, but it's also, you have enough mastery. I would imagine that surfing would feel like that when you're in a very chaotic situation, but you have sort of a mastery of it. It's difficult, but it's exhilarating. And I think in music and in play, I think sometimes in worship, there's a and I think in a lot of creative acts, certainly for me, there is a self-forgetfulness. Reduction of anxiety. I tend to be a little bit of an anxious person naturally. I tend to worry, and that's sort of a weakness, but I feel like I lose that. I forget about myself, and I get lost in the world that I'm creating, and lost in the making of this sort of gift for others. So the Lord's really used so much of my childhood. I started reading when I was 15, so I was really late to the game. But, I was into Shakespeare very quickly, classics. It was a big deal. I became a really serious Bible reader too, in my teenage years. And so that just shaped me. I've just had like a crash course on sort of catching up on the reading side. But I view it as sort of like, almost like I was being haunted by the vocation of a storyteller. Not in a bad way, but like the Holy Spirit just sort of bringing me through different ways that would actually, that would be for my good, and to help me develop this gift to serve others. And even though I wasn't a reader, I could see that creativity was already brewing. I would draw and make up things constantly. So yes, it was happening, just maybe not in the conventional way that for a lot of authors who sort of live at the library. That wasn't my experience. I was outside and playing.
There's so many questions that like popped up while you were sharing all that. I mean, just fresh in my mind here, like it stands out to me that, you didn't have a background in like reading at a young age. You weren't like reading tons of material, but you still have this natural gift of pretending, playing, imagination. But the flow state you were talking about too, that's pretty sweet. Did you kind of relate to that, hun?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and even how you mentioned struggling with anxiety, and when you can find that flow state to let go of the worries and the cares of this world, and find your purpose and something that's not inwardly focused but outwardly focused. And I definitely find that in surfing. I think surfing has been such a relief for me to escape the chaos on land and get in that kind of flow state. It's a gift that God has given me, and that gift has in turn been a blessing to so many people. Like, by me surfing my best has been a blessing to other people. I love that you look at your gift as a blessing to others. I think in our world today, so many of us are so self-focused, and that's where your anxiety comes from. And, I think when we focus on blessing others, for example, me speaking was really hard to get into.
Like
I didn't
events, like big events.
Big events. I didn't like being the center of attention. But when I put my focus on this is a blessing to others, that gave me the courage to show up and do it. And then over time, I overcame that fear and the self-doubt, or like the worry about being in front of people. And it became something that was more about the people and less about me.
No, I relate to that so much. And that literally, like speaking to, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, if you'd have told me I would be speaking to big groups of people or doing, things and doing even something like this, I would have just said, that's impossible. There's no way I would ever do something like that. But it's exactly, you're right. The key has been thinking about hospitality, thinking about generosity, and the calling to love others. The paradise of our own glory is a prison, and we think it's going to be this thing that's going to, if I just can focus on and get everything that I want, and it's just it is a prison, and the key to unlock that, I think, is loving others, and it's the great commandment, the greatest commands, and loving God and loving our neighbors, and he calls us, and as Christians, it's like there's no area where it's like, now this part, that's for you and you only, for your glory. It's like, no, it's all about loving. And sometimes loving is winning a championship or being the best at something. Like that's not a downside. It's this robust view of that God made the world, and that when we fully do something, when we show, that's why I don't think of storytelling as just a utility or a vehicle in order to convey even the best truths. I think of it as a good thing itself, because God made the world and he's called me to love and serve these kids. And it's not just about sort of tricking them or manipulating them or dominating them into information that I want, but that it's like to give them a gift of love that comes from the heart, and to tell the truth always, but to do a good job. It doesn't make, I always think about David Robinson. The best thing they can do as a Christian is not, make a basket and then like fall on their knees and praise the Lord and get out their Bible and start preaching. They need to get back on defense, like let the thing be itself, let the thing be what it is. And follow the Lord in that vocation fully, and show up in it and respect the thing. You don't have to draw crosses on the plumbing, in order to be a good plumber. Like you need to like fix the leak and do a good job. And so I feel like it's liberating to have this big view of what God's doing in the world.
Yeah, I love that and totally agree. And I think sometimes in our faith, we may underestimate the beauty of the simplicity of our daily life, and just showing up our best in our daily life. And also knowing that even when we don't show up our best, God's got our back, and he is the one who makes things whole, regardless of even if we're not whole, so to say.
You know that Bethany and I are incredibly intentional about how we approach our lives, from the content we consume all the way to the foods we eat.
When we started researching the food industry, it got us fired up to seek responsible, clean, and sustainable food sources.
Did you know that over 85% of the grass-fed beef in stores is imported and is labeled as product of the USA since it's packaged here? The truth is, much of the meat on the grocery store shelves is filled with things you don't want. Antibiotics, hormones, questionable origins, and even harmful seed oils.
That's why we choose GoodRanchers.com, the brand that stands for American quality and integrity.
At Good Ranchers, they do things the right way. All their meat is born, raised, and harvested in the USA.
When you buy from Good Ranchers, you're not just getting better meat, you're standing with American farmers, ranchers, and families who have been feeding this country for generations.
Good Ranchers products are free from hidden additives, there are no antibiotics ever, and no added hormones, and no seed oils. Just one simple ingredient you can read, and that's meat. But the best part, Good Ranchers delivers straight to your door. No more last-minute grocery store runs, long lines, or wondering if you're getting the best quality.
Can we just say, too, their chicken nuggets are incredible. So, just high-quality American meat shipped directly to you. As long as you're located in the lower 48, are you ready to get the quality your family deserves? Right now, you can subscribe to any Good Ranchers box and get $40 off your first order when you use my code Bethany at checkout. That's GoodRanchers.com, and by using my code Bethany, you'll get $40 off your first box of America's best meat. So let's be intentional about our life and be intentional about what we put in our body. Let's go to GoodRanchers.com today. Hey everyone, did you know we have a private community to empower families?
We know life is full of challenges, and Cultural norms can be leading us everywhere but the right path.
Families are stretched thin, teens are struggling, and staying anchored in faith can be really tough.
That's why we created something transformative, an online community designed to strengthen families, deepen relationships, question cultural lies, and encourage you to grow together in your faith.
Live shows with Adam and I, expert interviews, Bible studies, and fun family challenges, giveaways, and even brand new podcasts that you're listening to. We're here to equip you with the tools to thrive.
Our community will also be the first invited to our in-person epic family surf events that we will create memories that will last forever.
Join us on this journey. When you sign up for an annual membership, you will get free access to our top life courses, and you are automatically entered for a chance to win a trip to 4-3 to Kauai.
Awesome. So gather your family and join us for deeper connection and faith-filled fun in your home. Click the link to learn more, and we'll see you inside.
Okay, so today we have some extra special guests who are going to join us. I mean, Sam's pretty cool, but I think these other guests are incredibly, wonderfully, amazingly cool. Okay, let's join in our extra special guests.
Say hi to Sam, author of the Green Ember series.
Come sit like right around here, or Tobes, you can come under the mic.
Come closer. You guys can sit with me.
Sit on the chair by us.
All right, boys.
Okay, say hi on the mic, or else he
Say hi
can't
to the
hear
mic.
you, okay?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello, greetings. This is a nice clan. This is some good-looking people here.
Yeah, so these are our children plus our 2 nephews. We got Tobias, Matthew, Joshua, Alea, Micah, Wesley, and Matthew. And they've all sat in on some read time with us in listening to your books. And we're all like just such big fans of your writing and your books. So we asked the boys to come up with a few questions for you, and here we go. Yeah.
All right. Okay, first up, Tobias, you have a question. Go for it.
Who is the pilgrim?
Wow, just getting right to it. The biggest secret in all of Green Ember lore. You're going right for the heart of it, man. So I'll just tell you, I do have plans to write more on the Pilgrim, but I am not going to be able to reveal this on the. You almost got the scoop of the century there, but no.
Oh, no! So we gotta wait, Bias.
You gotta wait. Who do you think it is, Tobias?
Come close.
I think it's one of the guys who looked for the first flower.
Fowler.
Oh,
Flower.
like,
yeah.
the ones that left like during King Jupiter's reign, like that. Those guys. That's a
Yeah.
popular
Good
theory,
guess.
like Harlan Sear or I can't remember the other guys, but yeah. Interesting theory. You might need to keep searching.
Okay.
my
Okay.
goodness.
All right, Wesley, do you have a question for Sam?
The arrows from the pilgrim. The arrows from the pilgrim.
What about them?
Where, like, how did they get there?
Ooh, yeah, good question, man. What do you have a theory about that? I'm curious if you kind of figured out something.
No.
No.
How did
Okay.
Joe get them?
Wait, Joshua.
How did Joe get them?
So, well, I think Joe got one just kind of in the action there. I don't think he didn't have any before, but the Pilgrim did have special ones. I think if you think about, again, I don't want to give away too much, but you think about where the Star Sword came from in sort of the legend and what its properties were pretty special. And I don't want to spoil it for other people who haven't read the stories yet.
Yeah.
But you can find a connection there between the materials that sort of work to make this incredible sword also might work to make an incredible arrowhead that would go through walls and that kind of a thing. So,
Whoa.
did you guys
that's
just finish Ember?
interesting.
You must have just read Ember's End, is my guess.
Where is the book behind you? Are we gonna get that soon? The book behind you?
The Dragon Tomb?
Yes, that's
Green Ember Helmer.
That's
a new one.
that's the new book. That's the new project I'm working on right now that we're doing a
Wow.
Kickstarter for. It's called Helmer and the Dragon Tomb, and there is a book. It's Helmer's origin story when he was a young person, kind of like he was in the place of Pickett, like learning how to fight. So yeah.
That's awesome. You can tell they're
Ooh.
super fans because the detailed questions they're asking,
Yeah, I
and
love it.
noticing that they have not seen that book yet.
That's a
We
new
have
one.
we have the full series, and they would beg me to read it every night, and we'd spend hours reading Green Ember.
We would stay up
Yeah.
too late sometimes because we couldn't stop at that
Yeah.
chapter that we were finishing on. So we would be naughty and stay up extra late and read an extra chapter.
I love it.
Micah, do you want to play dragons
What do
with Mr. Sam here?
What do you like to do with the Green Ember?
I like being a Komodo dragon.
Oh no, that's bad news for our rabbits.
He does. He likes to stomp around and terrorize everybody with this Komodo dragon.
Well, he figured it out. He knows what they are. That's cool. That's
Okay, you guys, any final questions?
No.
You did?
Oh, yeah, Matthew's turn. Okay, Matthew, you're up.
When did you get the idea to make the book? How'd you get it?
So I love your name, Matthew. I grew up. That was my favorite gospel growing up, and we have a son named Micah, which I love, by the way. So I love all your names, Micah, who is like Yahweh, who is like our God. It's such a beautiful name. So you guys are awesome. So it was like this. It was like what you're looking at, what you're experiencing right now. It was a dad telling his kids the stories. So I told there were rabbits hopping around in the yard. We live in rural West Virginia, which is to say we live in West Virginia, but it's all the country. So there were rabbits hopping around the yard, and we I just started telling her a story about an older sister rabbit with her younger brother, and that was Heather and Pickett. And I told them those stories for years and years until they begged me to put it down in a book, and finally did. And we decided to share it with other people, and we found out there's a lot of other weird families like us that like stories like this.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're so glad we found the Green Ember. I think a friend had recommended it to us. And then the first time we read it, it was a little too scary for our younger children. So Adam
We
and I
got hooked.
disappeared into our room and we're reading it by ourselves because we got so hooked. So, well, thanks so much, y'all, boys.
Oh, Joshua has one more.
Oh, Joshua has one more. Okay.
What is your favorite part in the first book?
Oh,
Yeah.
the first book. Oh boy, I think it's the climax of the story, which I don't know. I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't read it yet, but you know the part where Pickett sort of like finally becomes who he's supposed to become and overcomes his fear, and I love that. Like that made me like jump. That happened in the sort of just telling stories to my kids. That moment happened, and we were all really like quiet, and it wasn't too far from where I am right now, and they were like, that's when they said, Daddy, you gotta write this down, because it was after that moment. So I love that. That was probably my favorite part.
Well, thank you, Sam. Thank you, boys, for your questions. We're going to take them back to Grandma's house, and then
Great
we'll
to meet
talk
you
to
guys.
soon.
Thanks for talking
Yeah.
to me. Appreciate it.
So you have how many children again?
We have 4.
4
Oh,
children? Awesome.
And
So
how
do we.
old is your oldest and youngest?
I've got two in college. So, well, actually, my son just graduated from college Saturday.
Wow.
But I've got a 22-year-old daughter, a 19-year-old son, a 16-year-old son, and a 13-year-old daughter. So 2 boys, 2
Awesome.
girls.
Yeah, and you mentioned that your eldest, or your eldest two, really wanted you to put your stories into a book. I just think that's so rad. Like, of all the people in the world to be cheered on in, like having your children cheer
Yeah.
you on to go and be brave enough to take
Mhm.
your ideas and dreams and creation and put it into something you can share with the world is like, wow, how did that feel for you? I'm sure it was like an interesting challenge, but also beautiful.
It was wonderful. That has been such a gift. I think about, I mean, they were little, for years, and I don't remember exactly how old they were at that point, but I remember it was such a special time for us together. It was on walks at bedtime. It was a long time, a serial adventure that we shared, and it was only us. And we had our own little language and our own. You know what it's like when you read a story, or we read the Lord of the Rings together as a family, and it's as a read aloud. And we went, we went to Mordor. That was like we made it. It was a family trip. I mean,
Yeah.
people think of reading as it just like enters your brain as information, but it's your body. Your heart rate changes. Like you said, your son talked about his face changing. Like you feel it. I mean, it's the same thing when you read scripture. It's powerful. Stories are powerful. They're meaning making machines, and we have this that we're designed for them. That's why the scripture is just so much full of narrative. It's not just commands, and even the commands are rooted in these narratives all the time. And so we just have so much story, and we shared it together. And I really thought when they said, Daddy, you got to write this down. And I was thinking the same thing. I think this is really special. But I was completely disconnected from the world of marketing or books or publishing at that time. This was a very totally organic story of just trying to love them and to give them a particular gift. And so when I wrote it down, I just thought this, and on the positive side, I just thought this will be a relic, like in our family. This will be this little memorial of like, we'll share it. And I was like, and I thought that's winning. Like we already won. That's it. And that'll be special, and they can read it to their kids, and we'll have this really special time sort of memorialized in this artifact of a book. And then we decided to publish it, which was through my brother-in-law, Andrew, who we were working together on this site called Storyworld, and we'd wanted to publish books for a while. And I did not want to start with us, but he insisted. And when we were going to share it with the world, I thought, this is the worst. No one will read this book. It's great for our little family, but there's not other people like us, because it's way too intense, because it takes pain seriously. It takes we have vicarious experiences with death and with betrayal. And so it's way too intense, way epic for like little kids. So they won't read it, but older kids won't read it because it's rabbits. So I was like, I've written the perfect book that no one's ever going to read. And it's funny that it would just the opposite happen, but it was so uncalculated. It was just but I just think there's something powerful. There's a quotation that it's attributed to Henry Nowlan, but I think there's a lot of doubt whether he said it, but he said, whoever said this, that the most personal is the most universal. That when you give particular gifts, I think you have that in music a lot. Like you'll hear a particular song, like for a man, for a woman or something. And it has like maybe someone's name in it, but everybody, you relate to it and you think, oh, that's how I feel. And I think when you try to write something like, I'm going to write the next Chronicles of Narnia or the next whatever, like you can't do that. You have to write, you have to care, you have to love someone very particularly. And I think this book, I think one reason why it resonates is because it was so hospitable and loving, and from a father to their children. There wasn't any calculation in that. I wasn't thinking about like what's hot in the book market right now, and actually it was very much not. Like publishers did not want to publish a story with these sort of old-fashioned virtues, but with modern pacing, and I call it a new story with an old soul. But there was such an appetite. There were a lot of families like ours that there was this huge hole in the market where they're just not being served, and with these kinds of stories. And I didn't know that, and I didn't know the book would resonate with a lot of young boys, particularly who are struggling to read, and a lot of people who had dyslexia. I didn't know it would resonate with families doing read aloud. I didn't know that it would serve deeply families that are going through suffering and death or cancer or this kind of a thing. I didn't plan that. I just was trying to give a good gift to my kids, but it's happened. And that's just like the Lord is at work. And I give him glory for that. He was used. I love the expression that God draws straight lines with crooked sticks. And I just feel like I have my crooked sticks together, there, and what I'm capable of doing is very limited. And even that year, I could go on and on about the year that I wrote the Green Ember was an extremely painful year, a really difficult time. And that
I actually wanted to get into that a little bit, is like, just through reading your book, I know you have experienced, challenge in your life. And I don't know, you don't have to go super deep, but I would love to hear a little bit about just your life and the challenges you've faced. And I think it's so amazing too that you've read the Bible, and I can feel all that within your books. And I'm sure there was probably moments in writing your book that probably it was like releasing pain in a sense,
Mm.
because of that's just life, and like it's a way to express and work through those challenges. Is that true?
Yes. I mean, I think that it's funny just thinking about your story, Bethany, that that the Lord works through weakness, or the Lord works through something that you think would be your biggest setback ever. And that certainly happened with me, not as physically or dramatically, or maybe, but it was maybe more internally. But that year was a really, really difficult year. And I think, there have been some challenges there. I probably, I think all sort of artistic types of people feel things pretty deeply. And I think just that I can just say that during that year, my health was really bad and I was struggling. Our kids were really young, really, I'm working 2 jobs, no margin at all, coaching, highly involved in my church. Physical health really bad, mental health not very good either. My father diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and during that time, it was a really challenging time in many ways. And I think that I do think I have seen now. I didn't know that then, but the books take suffering seriously, I think, in a real way, which the scriptures are there's so much in the scriptures about. It's a lot about how to deal with suffering. And I think so much of culturally is like, we want to just escape. Like that's all we want to do, is we want to only escape our troubles, our difficulties. If a marriage is difficult, escape. If there's we can quit, you can move, you can leave your church, you can deconstruct from Christianity. There's always like, get away.
Right.
And instead of sort of like, there's so much in the New Testament about like, how do we deal with pain? How do we deal with suffering? How do we deal with trials? And there's internal, there's sin, and there's so much. But I long so much to tell my kids the truth, and to not, I think so much of what we call Christian literature or Christian fiction, pats kids on the heads and says, oh, you do bad things. If you'll read the Bible, then you'll do really good. Or if just kind of simplistic, moralistic kind of stories that are safe for the whole family in a sense, but I actually think are more dangerous because they don't kind of communicate some of these deep difficulties and suffering, and that there is moral complexity. So I really want to give the kids a gift of reality with a capital R. I wanted to tell them the truth and have them, for them to be, I think you were talking about earlier, Adam, but just like for them to be equipped, for them to have vicarious experiences, because they're going to have them in real life, betrayal, death, all these things. Each of them is going to have a death scene that's going to happen. And if they've walked through that with noble characters, that's going to equip them in a way that just telling them information won't. You can say God is love or Jesus is loving, but if you don't have a story, the words actually are pretty meaningless. So why do we have 4 different accounts of God, these gospels, these biographies of Christ and his doings? Like, the stories are important. And when Jesus raises Jairus's daughter, you don't have to be like, what does it mean that Jesus loves? Like, there it is. There you see it, and it's right in front of your face. And you not only get the truth, you get the true information that Jesus is loving, that he's powerful, but you feel it, because you've encountered it in the story. And that's why I think that's the meaning is so important. Lewis said that the intellect is the organ of truth, but the imagination is the organ of meaning. So I think we get our meaning from stories and from what's in the imaginative sort of sphere of our capacities. And I think Christians have too long sort of neglected the stories and the imagination and just said, like, here are these true statements.
I think, like, to your point, like, the dangerous part is like parents allowing other things to teach their children, whether that's their peers or media of some sorts that are teaching them and allowing them to experience it by themselves without the parent as the guide, or without God's word as the guide. Like us reading the Green Ember series aloud to our children, we're encountering these things together. When we're reading God's word, we're encountering those stories in the Bible together and talking about it and working through it. So thank you for sharing that story on such a deep level, so that you can have these conversations as a family. And I'm just curious too, like, with your children, you brought them into that world. What were some ways like you also like loved on your children? What was that like for them growing up out there?
Sure. I mean, yeah, the kids grew up. It's funny because I was on guard against sort of them not being readers more
Oh
than I
yeah.
was on guard for anything else because
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'd often thought of reading as in school terms as in like if you read then you'll get a reward, or it's like this vegetable that you've got to eat and it's really tough, but you got to do it, it's like homework. Or but we did this like whole psyop on our kids about like, well, if you do this, if if you clean your room or whatever, you'll get to read, you'll be allowed to read. So
Yeah.
we sort of tricked them into it, but you don't need a whole lot. It's like a good drug. It's like it's very addictive, having good experiences with reading. So we
Mhm.
Right.
just got them in the door. But yeah, it was very natural for our family. We live in the country, and it's to take walks and to spend time in creation and to play sports and that kind of thing. So that was a pretty natural sort of part of our raising our kids. But our
That's
kids,
awesome.
they've played in with music. That's been a kind of a natural thing for that. We sort of set traps on that front as well. Like we set reading traps, we set musical traps too, and they're all musical, write music and record music and that kind of thing. That's a
Yeah.
big deal for
I
them.
think when it comes to children and having to learn something really hard, for example, with surfing, like I did kind of bribe Tobias to
Some
surf.
traps.
I gave him
Yeah.
gummy bears if he would catch
Good.
a certain amount of waves. And
Yeah.
lo and behold, it really helped him overcome some hurdles that he might not have if I
Yeah.
didn't
Mhm.
put that there. And I asked him the other day because he's older and he's a little shredder. I was like, "So, are you stoked that mama bribed you to learn to surf when you were little?" And he was like, "Yeah," with a
Yeah.
big smile. So I think there's a time and place for that, no doubt. But as you were talking earlier, the mom in me, like there was definitely moments in reading that book, like just welling up inside, like, oh my gosh, like this is such a gift to be able to read this with my children and
Mm.
kind of go through these internal battles. There's a lot of children's books out there that I feel like don't give you any of these major points that you've kind of talked about that maybe are very surface level or maybe even destructive on our children. Is there a lot of like books that you maybe would say don't bring goodness into the home for teenage boys?
My advice isn't to live in fear, but to live intentionally and to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
awake to it. And
Yeah.
what you're doing is so beautiful. I love this so much, and I've heard this just tens of thousands of times from parents saying we had these hard conversations. We had this conversation about betrayal. We had my child came to me and actually confessed something because they were seeing something in themselves that they saw in these books. Or we had these
Aw.
conversations about the kingdom of God. We had these conversations about the future because of we were talking about the mending, and we were talking. So we have these deep conversations. I love that's my heart is that the parents would be involved. And when they're not, I think of it as this sort of like mission into behind the iron curtain kind of a thing that I hope these books go to homes even where that's not happening, and these children themselves will have an encounter with light. My own personal calling is I want to be more of a creator and a curator. I want to because it's pretty easy to sort of say, oh, the state of media or this so bad. And it's because it's true and there's so much truth in it, but it doesn't necessarily help. It helps some, it helps to warn or say like, you really shouldn't, that's really some garbage. I wouldn't give that to your kids. That's generous. But I think of my life as being my posture is I want to create, I want to make, I want to fill that gap. I want to actually do good. I want to do good in that space. And then I want to curate. I want to say like, it's not, maybe not this, but this, like, hey, have you tried the Lord of the Rings? Have you read this sort of a thing? Have you read, Tumbleweed Thompson by Glenn McCarty? Have you read these kind of books? Are you turned on to this sort of author? That's my heart and my dispositions. I want to have that posture of creation and curation.
We are super grateful for the sort of books you're putting out there, and we can't wait for whatever else is to come into the future.
Yeah,
no pressure, but a little bit of pressure.
What's
please.
next? Is the world growing? The Green Ember world growing? What's next for you?
Sure, it is. I started a trilogy called The Lost Tales, which I want to finish. I've got that's hopefully next, and after this Helmer story, that's hopefully going to be multiple books. I do want to tell more Pilgrim stories. So in different ways, I want to show up in places that are pretty dark, which I know a lot of families don't want to do video games at all, but we're making a Green Ember video game to show up in that space, and it's
Whoa.
so many games are now are sort of like slot machines. They're made to to be predatory on kids and families, and to sort of extract money and time and energy, and they have this addictive loop. But this book, the new Green Ember book, the new Helmer book, it's going to be a game and a book at the same time. It's sort of like you can play it, and it's a beginning, middle, and end, sort of like games used to be, where you don't have to. It's not an endless loop, and it's like a book. You can go into it. It's got the same sort of virtuous heart and hospitable. So some people won't love that, and I understand that if that's not for every family. But the truth is, there's a lot of people doing that, and we're trying to meet them there, and we hope it's a gateway into reading for a lot of kids. That's sort of the heart. Right now, we're doing a Kickstarter right now for the new Helmer book and game, and so I'm really thrilled about that. And Lord willing, if He gives me health and years, I want to keep telling Green Ember stories and other kinds of stories. If he'll give me that gift, I definitely feel called to it.
Awesome. Well, we're thankful that you are called to that and sharing your passion. And I mean, just really cool to hear how that started in humble beginnings with your family, sharing inspirational and just fun stories. And just to share that with the world now is really beautiful. So thank you, Sam. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
We are cheering you on in all the future projects. And I'm very excited about this Helmer story, because I always thought, I was like, Helmer has a unique childhood, and he's been through it at some point or another. He's been through some intense stuff. So I am very excited to read this Helmer book. And thank you so much for jumping on All Things Possible. And we will be on the lookout for any next project book that you have releasing. So thanks, Sam. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. If you want to support SD Smith in his Kickstarter, with a Kickstarter, you got to raise the full amount for everything to go through. And I know he needs a bit of support. So jump in, buy his books, support his Kickstarter, and we hope that you love today's episode and you're encouraged to go and read with your family. Your family needs connection. TV is not connection. Gaming is not connection. But reading together as a family is a fun way to connect and think about life on a deeper level. And the Green Ember series certainly did that for our family, and will continue to, because we are going to reread this series at least 3 more times throughout the next 10 years. So thanks so much for jumping in, and we're cheering you all on. Aloha.